When I was first learning Spanish, I tried all of the normal ways to learn the language, but I didn't realize how much this was damaging my progress. And there are three main things that hurt my results the most. The part that I find crazy is that these are so common that I don't think most people view them as a bad thing. So you may consider these my hot takes on language learning. But if you happen to be similar to me, then these three things will change your life. And even if you're not similar to me, then number 3 is going to be something you're going to want to change. And there's a good chance you're doing it right now. So stick with me and let's get right into this. So number 1, a common piece of advice I hear is language learning is a lifelong journey. But for me, this advice has done more to make me want to quit than it's actually helped me. In a broad sense, it is true. I mean, we're still learning things in our native language to this very day, but it's not like we're actively studying the language anymore. We're just experiencing it. So when people say language learning is a lifelong journey, I think it slows people's progress down. Because if you say it's a lifelong journey, well, if I'm going to be learning the language for the rest of my life, do I really have to go hard today? And this advice is usually paired with consistency because, well, it's better to do 10 minutes a day than to do 5 hours today and then nothing for the next couple of weeks. Consistency is important, but slow consistency is going to make you want to quit. Let me explain. So one person might study 10 minutes a day for an entire year, while another person might study an hour a day for an entire year. These two things are not the same, even though if you ask someone, how long have you been learning language? They would both say, well, it's been about a year. So for me, when I was learning Spanish for the first time, I was focused on being consistent more than I was about just spending time in the language. So I just wasn't gaining any progress at all. I was studying for several months, a year, and I just didn't get anywhere. And this right here is why I think most people quit, because they only see the entire year. So they look back at the year and think, man, like, is this even worth it for me to be studying the language if I'm not going to be getting much progress at all? So for me, I wouldn't say that language learning is a lifelong journey. Sure, you'll be learning things for the rest of your life, but language learning should have an end goal. Ideally, that goal would be just experiencing the natural language, the same way we experience our native language. We still learn things, but we're not actively trying to study the language. So if we could get to that point in a foreign language, I would think that is the best thing to have. That should be the end goal. And this is why I like to track hours studied, because it gives a better representation of what I've done in the language. Because 100 hours is going to equal about the same thing. But the time difference might look different if it's done in 3 months versus a year. So for example, a language similar to your native language may take 600 hours to build up proficiency, where a language that is much different might take 2,200 hours. So if I wanted to learn Italian, it would probably take 600 hours to build up proficiency. But if I wanted to learn Italian in a year, well, I better be studying 2 hours a day. If I was okay with it taking 2 years, well, I could study an hour a day. Simply knowing this allows you to better track and better plan to reach that end goal. And of course, you don't stop learning there, but I would bet if you could reach that point, you won't have to actively study the language anymore. You could just experience the language and learn things naturally. And everything I'm saying here flows into the common piece of advice number 2, which is language learning is easy. Language learning may be simple, but it's not easy. I would even go as far to say that language learning should be at least a little bit tedious. I think too many people try to take the easy path. Like before, talking about the times. If you only study a half an hour a day, you're not going to really progress in the language. So for me, when I was learning Spanish, I was trying to make it as easy as possible because I can be lazy when it comes to certain things. I think everyone has a certain amount of laziness to them. So most people, when they view themselves learning a language, they want to get there, the end result, as quickly as possible, as easily as possible. But those two don't mix. You're going to either learn really fast or you're going to learn really easy, but it's going to take a long time. The shortest path is often going to be the most tedious. And I think this tedious practice is what most people are missing. I just recently did a video about my 7-step formula to learning with native content. And there's one that I know is tedious. And I even got comments of people saying it was tedious, but I don't think that's a good enough reason to not do it. you should try to do it. Now, as a side note, there is a case to be said that if you're familiar with language learning and you know that's going to be too tedious for you, then you don't have to do it. But I don't think most people try to do anything beyond just the basics. I think you should try to do the studying that is really tedious to see if it's even interesting to you in the first place, because you might find like, wow, this is actually really good. I thought it was going to be really tedious at the beginning, but it's actually working for me. And this happened to be true for me, because when I first started this practice, it sounded incredibly tedious, but it's since become my favorite way to learn a language. And I would have never gotten there if I didn't try it in the first place. So try it out. If it's something that will make you want to quit the language, then you can stop it, but at least try it in the first place and see if it actually does a lot for you. So if you want to watch that video and see what this practice is, you could go watch over there. And while there were people who were saying like, oh, this sounds incredibly tedious, there were other people who actually tried it and even commented saying, wow, I didn't realize how much I was missing in the language. I thought this was going to be easy, but it was actually much more difficult than I thought it would be. And I love it. And the reason why this works is because you get to feel like you're actually progressing in the language again. We often forget how much time we've spent in our native language, doing a lot of tedious work to actually build up proficiency. Like, we all went to school. That was incredibly tedious, but that's all experience that we have in our native language. And we should try to replicate that in the language that we're learning if we want to build up some natural proficiency. And finally, we get to number 3. Learning with slow audio. This is the one that drives me insane, because you can find tons of videos with tons of views of practice your listening with slow Spanish or something like that. And it hurts my ears to listen to it, because I know that's not the way that people actually speak. Like, slow audio might be a good confidence boost in the short term, but in the long term, it damages you. It trains your mind to react slowly. This is why so many people, when they actually try to talk with a native, they can't pick up on what's being said, even if they know every single word. It's the equivalent of living life, and you only ever walk from place to place. Then all of a sudden you have to go into a sprint for your life. You're probably going to hurt yourself. You might even get injured. In the language learning world, it's listening to slow audio. You practice listening to slow audio, and then all of a sudden you speak to a native speaker and they're going for the sprint. It's going to break your mind. Even if you know every single word that they're saying, you're not going to be able to keep up because you've practiced for slow audio. So if you're learning by yourself, I would never, ever touch slow audio. It hurts more than it helps. It might help you at the beginner phases, but you want to get into natural audio as soon as possible. I would even go as far to say, like, day 1, start listening to native audio. Even if you're not picking up everything, you want to at least get familiar with the pacing of the natural language. Now, you might be wondering, but what if I can't keep up with it? Well, there is a time and a place for slow language, and that's when you're face to face with a person. Because if they're talking fast and you can't keep up with them, it's not going to be much of a conversation. But if they slow down, it'll give you a chance to communicate back with them. But if you're on your own and you're learning with resources online, it damages your progress if you only use that slow language, because you can't speed up that slow language to match a native speaker. But if you have native level content, you could always slow that down to be able to start to hear all of the sounds and the way the language flows. Now, for the same reason, I also don't like machine text-to-voice systems, because, while it might give you a taste of what the language sounds like, it won't give you the natural flow of the language. This is why I like to learn from native content and also have native audio clips that I could continuously review. Because of that, I've been trying to build my own application, Mizas.com. Basically, I'm making this as the search engine for language learners, where you can find native content in your target language and save words and even clip audio directly from videos. Right now, making new audio clips is a desktop-only feature, but if you are on mobile, we have a public database full of audio clips, and this is only growing by the day. Now, this website is still in early production. You don't have to use it, but if you do, keep that in mind, and please send me as much feedback as possible, because I want to make it even better. Now, if you do want to use it, because it's mainly focused around native content, you might also want to watch my video of my 7-step formula of learning from native content. So if you want to go watch that, I'll see you over there.